Good evening, everybody. It is now 6:30 on Tuesday, October 27th, 2020, and you are at the Wausau City Hall Common Council meeting. So I guess we're going to start off with the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you. And then I'm going to hand it over to Clerk Leslie for the roll call.
Peckham?
Here.
Martins?
Here.
Killian?
Here.
Neal?
Here.
Wadinsky?
Here.
McElhaney? Here. Rasmussen?
Here.
Watson?
Here.
Herbst? Here. Larson?
Here.
Ryan? All 11 members are present.
Thank you. Do we have any pre-registered citizens for matters appearing on the agenda?
No one
Nope.
registered.
Nope. All right, so we're going to start off with a presentation. As you know, October is Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and we have two special guests. I think we'll start with LaTanya Campbell from the women's community, if that works for you.
That's fine.
Okay, so we're going to start off with you.
So I wanted to thank you for declaring October 2020 Domestic Violence Awareness Month. Our board, staff, and most importantly, victims of intimate partner violence appreciate your acknowledgement and support in bringing awareness to this social issue. As she stated, my name is LaTanya Campbell. I work at the women's community, where we are a victim advocacy program. We provide supportive services to all victims, regardless of age, ability, race, gender or sexual identity, religious beliefs, or socioeconomic status. Our goal is to empower victims, help them find their peace, and live a life without violence. Victims can access our 24-hour crisis line, our emergency shelter, as well as outreach services. We have specific programs for domestic abuse, sexual assault, human trafficking, and abuse in later life. At the women's community, we do have specialized programs geared to provide advocacy through a multicultural lens for both the Latinx and Southeast Asian populations. We realize that what may be safe for one person may not be safe for another, and we never encourage a person to leave an abusive situation, whether we encourage them to do what they feel is safest for them. To accommodate victims' needs, the women's community created the Transitional Living Program and the Justice System Program to help victims achieve safety, self-sufficiency, as well as support in navigating through the civil and criminal justice system. All of our services are free and confidential. Intimate partner violence is deliberate acts of intimidation and abusive behavior as part of a system of power and control. Domestic violence doesn't discriminate. People from all walks of life can find themselves in abusive relationships. Educational attainment, employment status, profession, gender, or sexual identity, and any other identifying demographics simply does not protect you from domestic violence. The frequency, severity, and method varies. It can take the form such as emotional, verbal, physical, sexual, and financial abuse. Just to kind of give you some examples of what that looks like. Emotional abuse would be like isolation, threatening suicide, taking or destroying property. Verbal abuse can be things like yelling, insulting, making threats, or belittling a victim. Physical abuse, as you would presume, would be like pushing up against the wall, slapping, punching, or strangulation. Sexual violence could be coerced acts, forced pregnancy, or constant accusing one person of cheating. Financial abuse could be withholding money, not allowing the victims to work, or have access to important documents. One or more of these methods of abuse can be present in a relationship. People always ask, why doesn't the victim just leave? Well, there are a multitude of reasons. The victim does love the victim does love their partner. The abusive partner is not always abusive, and they hope things are going to get better. The victim may have children, and they don't want to separate the family, or if they separate the child has to go visit with the abusive partner, and sometimes that abusive partner is also abusive to the children. The victim may be financially dependent upon the abusive partner and fears being homeless or hungry, not able to feed their children. The victim may fear that the perpetrator may take their own life or take both their life, the life of their children. Again, there is a multitude of reasons. So In Abuse Wisconsin released their 2019 homicide report, shedding the light on 72 people in Wisconsin that lost their lives as a result of intimate partner violence. That's one death every 5 days. Ages range from infant to 77 years old. And most were in the process of leaving or had left the abusive relationship. In 2019, the women's community saved lives. We were able to serve 1,649 people and provide 7,097 nights of shelter to victims and their children to keep them safe. With the current climate of the pandemic, we have seen a rise in the number of victims accessing our crisis lines and walking through our doors. Like most people, they feel the weight of COVID, and they're being isolated from their family and friends. They're not able to participate in family activities or entertainment, such as going to the park or restaurants. Their children are attending school virtually, so they have the responsibility of making sure that the kids' educational requirements are met. But that also means they have to adjust their work schedule or leave work altogether because the childcare is not affordable or an accessible option. The only time they would generally get peace is when they were at work or that when their partner was at work. But in many cases right now, no one is going to work. The tension is getting high, the verbal and emotional assaults are increasing, and the severity of the abuse is extreme. Advocates at the women's community, we listen, we validate, and we support victims. We sit with them and let them know better days are coming, better days are possible. We remind them of their strength, their voice, courage, and their power. We safety plan with them and provide information and resources to try to alleviate some of those burdens. We support them on their journey of being safe and finding their peace. We don't do this work alone. We work side by side with law enforcement, with the district attorney's office, with victim witness, the hospitals, child advocacy center, social service programs, and the school district. So we are very thankful for the community partnership to work towards eradicating domestic violence. This proclamation does have meaning. I know sometimes, there's one proclamation after another, but I do want you to know that this does have meaning. It brings awareness to the community. It takes a stand against intimate partner violence, and it takes away the silence of abuse, and it elevates the voice of the survivors. It allows us to know that we have the support of the community, but more importantly, it lets survivors know that they're not alone. So I just want to thank you again for declaring October 2020 Domestic Violence Awareness Month, and thank you for doing your part in saving lives.
Thank you so much, LaTanya. I don't know if anybody here has any comments or questions or would like to. Thank you for sharing all that information. It's really important that we talk about this. We also have Officer Bedish, who is part of our Wausau Police Department, the Victim Resources Unit. So she's going to give us a kind of a quick discussion on what we're doing here, the Wausau side. Welcome. Thank you.
Hey. I brought my entourage too.
Great. I love it.
Because it's not just me in the Victim Resource Unit. You can click it. Unless this works.
Ooh, that might work.
It should.
Let's try it.
Did it happen?
It might work. So the Victim Resource Unit, or the VRU, for short, is comprised of myself. So I'm an officer with Wausau Police Department. I've been with Wausau PD now since 2011. So for the first 4 years, I was on patrol. Then the last 4 years, I was in the Community Resource Unit. So that's like our street crimes unit, our drug unit. And now I've been reassigned to the Victim Resource Unit as that officer. So my responsibilities within the unit are to follow up with DARTS, which is Domestic Abuse Response Team, and then a SART, which is a Sexual Assault Response Team. So as an officer, I primarily follow up with all victims of crime. So in the mornings, between Lauren and I, who is our crime response specialist, we go through the reports, and then we follow up with victims that need our assistance. Obviously, most of the victims that I'm following up with are more than likely going to be the sensitive crimes, so domestic violence, sexual assault, substantial battery, theft or burglaries, robberies. to see what we can offer as far as victim services go, and if there's anything that we need to do as law enforcement to further the case or solidify the case for the district attorney's office. Lauren helps with a lot of that follow-up, so she kind of fills that gap where law enforcement isn't needed. So she will follow up with advocacy, potentially establishing needs like financial needs that the victims might need, especially crime victim compensation. So think of crime victim comp as kind of like an insurance policy for victims of crime. It's pretty neat. They have to file a claim, and crime victim comp can cover some of that cost, the loss of wages, or if they have to seek mental health or medical wages or medical exams outside of something the insurance is going to cover. Then we have Kristen, who's our mental health therapist, and then her therapy dog, Soko, that's why I put his name up there. She obviously is going to provide therapy services for our victims. It's free of charge, and she sees anywhere from ages 12 and up to adult. So it's primary victims, secondary victims, and I believe even tertiary victims. Where'd you go? Like tertiary victims or families of crime. So that's free of charge, and she holds office hours not only at the police department, but also at the women's community. So that's what the VRU is comprised of. 50% of our, especially in my position, is funded through VOCA, and the other 50% is funded just like my normal wages are. Oh, actually, nope. So we pulled we have to keep track of all of the victims that we assist. So it does not cover every victim that the city of Wausau has had contact with from the beginning. This is just what we at our unit reports to VOCA, correct? So this is from October of 2019 up through September of 2020. Granted, there's a lot of crime up there, but the one thing we need to focus in on is the fact that 42% of what we reported just within my unit was domestic violence. So that's pretty scary, and that's just coming from my unit. That doesn't cover the victims that we may not have assisted. Good. So just some stats. For our reporting period, again, from October 2019 through September of 2020, again, this is just what my unit reports. We had 239 new victims. 141 of them were continuing services, so from the last grant reporting. Of those victims, 206 were from domestic abuse. Go ahead. Next. So just from July 20 to September of 2020, so that was the last quarter, 56 new victims, 54 of them were continuing. The victims of domestic abuse were 56. So we've had quite a few. Just for the fourth quarter alone, 18 victims of domestic violence engaged in therapy with Kristen, 6 were new and 12 were returning clients. It's nice to see that we have 12 returning clients because that means they're continuing on with services. So how do we, I guess as law enforcement, this is what we are seeing. I know one of the questions, well, what's the trend? What makes it a domestic? So I counted, just for you all, I went through all of our reports, and I counted approximately 234 calls for service since January up until October. 234 of them were domestic-related calls. That's huge. So keep in mind a domestic call, it has to be 2 individuals that have resided together as adults. So think of a brother and sister. If they've lived together past 18 and they get into a fight and they start, hurting each other or causing a disturbance, that's technically a domestic situation. It covers roommates, it covers husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, children and parents. If you're adults and you live together and you caused a scene, it could potentially be a domestic. Also, if you have a child in common, if there's a fear of future violence between the individuals, that constitutes a domestic. If the report or incident occurs within the last 28 days, it's a mandatory arrest for that offender. So we have to do our best to locate that offender and take them into custody. So how we handle a call, I know this is really tiny, but in a nutshell, I think there might be some misunderstanding of how we might address a domestic call. So in a nutshell, officers are going to respond to something that comes in. They're going to respond, they're going to investigate, they're going to make the arrest. Obviously, if there's a domestic there, it's a mandatory arrest. So they're going to do their best to physically take that offender into custody. If that offender is not located, then they will do the referral, but still attempt to make contact with that offender at some point. After they make that arrest, this is something that maybe goes unnoticed that we do here in Wausau. The officer, the investigating officer, is going to stay on scene and continue talking with that victim. They're going to do a couple different pieces of paperwork. One of them is our domestic violence supplementary incident report. Say that 10 times fast. That covers a lot of the history between the offender and the victim. They want to go through and see if things have happened before, if there's things that have gone unreported, what type of risk factors are out there. This just kind of helps solidify that case and gives us an idea of what's actually been going on prior to officers arriving there. If it's an intimate partner relationship, so that means if it's husband and wife, boyfriend and girlfriend, teen dating, we are also going to do the lethality assessment protocol, which is LAP. It's a new thing that we have now implemented within the city of Wausau. It came from Maryland. It's newer to the Wisconsin area within the last 5 to 7 years. This helps us separate non-high danger victims with high danger victims. So it separates them out. If we now have a high risk or high danger victim, what we're going to be doing is connecting them with an advocate right away instead of making that call later or waiting for me to do the follow-up the next day. So the officers are making that call right as they're on scene with the victim and getting that victim set up with services right then and there. That increases the likelihood of that victim continuing on with services and hopefully leaving that situation later on. Also, that goes into effect if the offender is arrested. There's a 72-hour no contact that goes into effect immediately. If the offender is taken into custody, 72-hour no contact means that that offender cannot have contact with the victim for 72 hours unless the victim waives that contact, which they have the right to do that. After that, the victim information brochure is issued to our victim that explains their rights as a victim. A lot of victims don't realize it, but they have rights, and they have a right to know those rights. It also gives our information at the victim resource unit. It also gives the district attorney's information so that the victim always has some type of outlet and someone to call if they need it. It also gives them the case number and the officer, the investigating officer. If there's a strangulation that occurred, there's another questionnaire that we go through with the victim as well to make sure that we are addressing a strangulation. If there's injuries or a strangulation, we go through a medical release form with them, if applicable. And that all gets turned in with the report. The next day or over the weekend is when the VRU comes in. We go through the reports and we address what the officers did at the scene. And then we try to establish what we need to do further as far as helping that victim get through their situation. So the trends that we've been seeing a lot of strangulation and suffocation cases. I would say if I had 5 cases in a week, I'd say 3 to 4 of them are going to involve strangulation and suffocation. We've been seeing a lot of false imprisonment and recklessly endangering safety as well. I don't know why. I don't know why we've been seeing those trends. I don't think they're new. I don't think it's just suddenly the offenders decided they want to up the ante. Honestly, I think our officers have better training and they know how to ask the right questions and are asking those questions right away and taking the time to investigate those situations further and are documenting them better. Or they're making it more comfortable for the victims to come forward and talk about those situations and actually asking those questions. Also, I think another thing that we're seeing, because we have the VRU, it increases our follow-up and time to interview the victims later. So the officers are making that contact right away, they're getting the initial information, and then we come along and are able to gather more information, which actually might land additional charges for the offender down the line. Because it gives us the time as VRU to ask the more questions in a more convenient and calm situation versus the night of the incident when things are really scary. So a DART, I'll kind of go into this a little bit more what we do. So when I do a DART follow-up or a domestic abuse response follow-up, we're either doing it in person or over the phone. So there are officers that are assigned just to the DART team. With just officers and with our crime response specialists, they were able to make 43 either attempts or contacts with victims. That's awesome. That's absolutely amazing because that's attempts that otherwise would not have been made. The VRU, so this is my follow-up. I've made, so with an advocate from the women's community, we were able to make contact with 21 victims in person and set them up with services, and we did 26 attempts. So we did 47 contacts/attempts since the beginning of the year. Without us or without our partnership with the women's community, those 47 victims might have gone unnoticed. So the resources that we offer is pretty amazing. Not only do we do LAP, but we work hand in hand with the women's community. I talk to the women's community probably more than I talk to my family. I'm on the phone with them multiple times a day. So we are following up with our victims. I work primarily with a legal advocate from the women's community, which assists with restraining orders and going to hearings with the victim and explaining the court process. We can help with restraining orders, divorce paperwork. The women's community obviously has a pantry. The victim and family can work with the women's community without cooperation with law enforcement. And that's something that some people aren't aware of. So if I have a victim, for example, that doesn't want to talk to me, they don't want to give any more details about the case, they're really scared to give details about the case, we refer to them as hesitant or reluctant, they can still seek services from the women's community, which is amazing. So we still tell them that if they don't want to talk to us, that's okay. We're always here when they need us, but they can still get help from the women's community. And we've had a lot of good feedback with that. Lauren can help with the crime victim compensation. Then we have Kristen for mental health. All of us can help navigate the legal system. It's very overwhelming for a victim that has no idea how the legal system works. I was talking to a victim today. The only contact she's ever had with a cop, she got a speeding ticket, she said. She's like, I don't know what this means. I don't know. What does it mean? What's a restraining order hearing? I don't understand. Like, do I have to be there? Do I not have to be there? How does this work? So it's really nice to be able to answer those questions because it can be very overwhelming for them. As far as the law enforcement side, they have me, so I can do a lot of the follow-up. So it's one person. They don't have to constantly call and ask for a different cop over and over and over again. So I do a lot of the follow-up interviews, a lot of the documentation, the photographs. I meet one-on-one with them. We will set up CAC, so that's the Children's Advocacy Center. So that's if a kiddo was involved or was a witness to the incident. We try to coordinate that so we can get the kiddo interviewed. So we'll participate with that along with the women's community. There might be an advocate there as well. The cool thing about my position is it frees up the patrol officer. So like I don't respond to calls for service, but I might be doing the follow-up on their behalf so that they can go out and do the rest of their work or continue to do their calls for service. So I'm doing a lot of the follow-up behind the scenes, and you still got the cops out on the street, which is a good thing. We also will assist in the evenings if necessary. So like if I can't make contact with a victim during the day, because people work and they aren't always home, a DART officer can do that on my behalf in the evening, and we've had a lot of good response with that. So VOCA funds, so like I said, part of my position is funded through VOCA. It's a grant, so with that grant money, that allows us to help with emergency funding, so we can pay people's rent, we can help pay their utilities, we can pay their cell phone bills, we can take them grocery shopping, we can buy them clothing, we can help pay for the in-between stuff that they just can't meet those needs because they're going through this process. We also have 3 different closets at the police department that have kiddos' clothing in there, hygiene, toys, diapers, wipes, you name it, it's probably in the closet. So that's available for officers, not only for victims, but for other situations that they come in contact during the night. So the other night, one of the officers he had a victim and she needed diapers. So they just come and get the diapers and the wipes because it's there and it's funded through VOCA. The one difference that we have between how I can use VOCA and how the women's community can use their funding, I have to have a cooperating victim in order to use funds to help them. So if I have a victim who doesn't want to cooperate as far as the prosecution goes, I can't help pay her rent with VOCA. Whereas the women's community could potentially step in and assist them through their funding. That's one of the differences we have there. And I talk to victims about that. Like, we can't help you unless you cooperate. And usually our victims are very cooperative, and it's okay. Next. Oh, that's it. Oops. What's that? Probably not. Do you want to explain VOCA?
I don't know if you guys heard of VOCA. We kind of throw that word around a lot. It's a victim.
Yeah, and could you also tell us how much that grant is for? Do you know? Oh, I think I just signed something for it, but I think the chief is on the line too, but I don't know if he knows.
I can't remember how much it
Okay.
is, but I know we throw the word VOCA around a lot, but VOCA is a Victim of Crime Act grant. And so it's a federal grant that
is basically like, you know, you hear of oil spills and like the oil companies get fined, like what happens to that money? It goes in a VOCA grant, the Victims of Crime Act grant, and then that gets dispersed through the country, and then each state kind of allocates who gets what based on applications and things. And so that's the money that we use for all those things. And then the state and the federal government have lots of different rules and things, which is why we can only use it with cooperating victims, and we have to chart everything and all those kinds of things. So I just wanted to clear that up because I know sometimes that gets really confusing. I don't know if there are any questions from, oh, I see the chief has unmuted himself. Of course he did.
Hello. I just heard the question in regards to the how much the grant was for, and so I just wanted to weigh in on that. I don't remember exactly off the top of my head, but you know, the Kristen and Lauren's position and part of Sarah's position are all covered under that grant. So my recollection is it's in the neighborhood of $200,000 to $225,000 annually.
That's what I had in my head too.
Yeah, it's a pretty significant grant.
Mm-hmm. Does anybody have questions here? Doesn't look like it. Thank you so much for presenting this, Officer Bedish and LaTanya. I really appreciate it. Cool. All right. We are moving on to our consent agenda. I would take a motion to approve the consent agenda. Oh, yeah. Are you making a motion?
No.
Okay.
I just want to pull that. I want to pull an item off the consent agenda, please.
Sure.
Number 20-1020, please. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Can you? I was scrambling for a pen here. 2-20-1020. 1020 resolution designated no right turn.
Yep, thank you.
Okay, that is pulled. All right. Do I have a motion to approve the consent agenda? Motion by Peckham. Second by someone. Second by Herbst. Okay. Is there any discussion? I will turn it over to Clerk Leslie for the roll call vote.
Peckham,
Oh, all right. We have a discussion by Larson. One moment.
I would just like to know why this was being removed.
Oh, we can talk about, okay.
Because it's on the consent agenda and I need to have some questions on it, and I can't do it if it's on the consent agenda. So we will talk about it as the first item on the regular agenda.
Thank
Sure,
you.
certainly.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready to vote.
Peckham. Martins.
Aye.
Killian.
Aye.
Neal.
Aye.
Wadinsky.
Aye.
McElhaney. Rasmussen.
Aye.
Watson.
Aye.
Herbst. Larson.
Aye.
Ryan. Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. All right, moving on to item number 20-1020, resolution from SISM designated no right turn on red at the Pick and Save parking lot exit for traffic proceeding on to eastbound Bridge Street. Do I have a motion? Motion by Wadinsky, second by Rasmussen. Any discussion? Yes. Alder McElhaney.
Thank you. I just have some questions. I hope, do we have DPW or one of the engineers on? Eric. I just have a question about if, I understand the issue. I was here back in SISM last term about this issue, but I wondered if there was any other, you know, they say, well, we pull in to turn right because of tripping the signal and stuff. And with all the changes to the pedestrian crossing, is there anything else that we can do to stop traffic besides no turn on red? I will tell you that is, you know, there will be people turning on red. You know, it doesn't matter if there's going to be a sign there. It is just to try to change behavior is going to be difficult. And I use the one worry I have is it's going to back traffic up. That is a very, very busy parking lot with Culver's and with Pick and Save. And if you're going to be stacking cars quite a bit backwards, and I just want to know if there was anything else tried, or if it's just, that's what we do because we don't know what else to do.
I think this is just one step
Becky, I know that Alan is working to take a look at the timing of the lights as well. But once the pedestrian crossings and stuff are all put in place, they'll look at the timings and stuff. I mean, as far as other signs, as far as trying to curb behavior, people are going to do things illegal, and unfortunately, unless they're penalized for that, there's not a whole lot else we can do. So, but I mean, off the top of my head, I don't know where we're at with the timing of the lights and those types of things.
Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. One thing we talked about in CISM, just briefly on this too, was that, just because people will choose to violate rules doesn't mean that you don't make them. And so that's where enforcement comes in. But with the addition of the pedestrian crossing and the repainting and things that have happened there, the traffic detection loops also have been moved back so that they're behind the line. And so there's been a major concern, I would say, for vehicular and pedestrian conflict. And, you don't realize how many people you have walking and biking through that area until that sidewalk wasn't available all summer. So, we felt that it certainly increases safety, and it was encouraged by engineering. It wasn't something that, we had just dreamed up as a treatment, so.
Alder Watson.
I guess my concern is too, is this gonna be something similar to what happened on Bridge in like 17th? Is the sign gonna go up and people are still gonna dismiss it, and it's not gonna really solve the problem?
I don't really have an answer for that. I mean, like I said, we have signs up all over that people just dismiss. We talked about making them larger, keeping them, to make them more visible. We can take a look at doing those types of things, putting a flashing light next to them, to bring it to people's attention and stuff. But as Becky mentioned, the behavior is, especially those that use it every day and are just used to making that right-hand turn. But I would say that the crossing itself, putting that crossing in, has already made significant improvement for safety for the pedestrians. And I think maybe this is just one more step towards that. And if there's other things that we come up with that we can do, we'll continue to do that.
Alder McElhaney.
I would like at least not to put a sign up like on 17th, because another fear of mine are people are going to get harassed by not turning, the people behind them. And that has happened, and people beep and harass, and that happened to me. I mean, and I was able to turn and it wasn't safe. So I know that I'm going to get 10 million calls on this because it's going to be a problem. So I want to make sure that that sign, whatever is put up, is very visible to everyone, and not just, because like I said, this isn't a new intersection. People are used to turning. So we need to do more than the sign on 17th where half the people missed it. I hope, I don't know, Eric, if putting a flashing light, I mean, that seems kind of overkill, but if you think, I really encourage you to look at something, something that is going to grab people's eyes again, because we are changing, what they have normally done. And people don't do well with that.
Yeah, understood. We'll take a look and see if there's different options for us, Becky.
Alder Watson.
I think it's similar to that, if you do something flashing like you did with, is it the one coming down Elm Street where it's now a four-way stop? It was coming down like that really steep grade, and that was a huge traffic change from what it used to be. But having the flashing signs at that stop sign where you made it a four-way instead of a two, I think that helped a lot to sort of raise awareness. So something a little bit more than just a small sign.
Is there any other discussion? Are we ready to vote? Oh, yes, Alder Wodinski.
I think either way, it's going to be a problem with violations. I mean, you could put the police there to get people to cite them for turning on red, or you can get the police there to cite them for failure to stop at crosswalk or before crosswalk. But the police aren't available to do that all the time, so you're not going to get that enforcement, which would be the best solution. So this is, unfortunately, in my opinion, the right solution at this time. Thank you.
Okay. Are we ready to vote? Looks like, I just want to let Alder Watson know your hand is up in case, for the future, I will call on you multiple times. Okay, I think we're ready to vote.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson? Watson? Herbst? Larson?
Aye.
Ryan? McElhaney?
Aye.
Wedinski?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins? Peckham? Motion passes 10-1.
Okay, thank you. Moving on to file number 201003, mayor's appointments. This is the appointment of Doug Hostler to the Ethics Board. I would entertain a motion. Motion by Rasmussen, second by Peckham. Is there any discussion? Looks like there's no discussion. We're ready to vote.
McElhaney? Wedinski?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins? Peckham? Ryan? Larson?
Aye.
Herbst? Watson?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Great, thank you very much. We're moving on to file number 12-1106. It's a resolution from CISM authorizing the downtown snow and ice removal for the 2020-2021 year. Do I have a motion? Motion by Rasmussen. Second by Wodinski. Is there any discussion? I'm not seeing any discussion, so ready to vote.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst? Larson?
Aye.
Ryan? Peckham? Martins? Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wodinski?
Aye.
McElhaney? Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. Moving on to file number 201019, resolution from CISM authorizing the sale of city-owned property at 510 South 32nd Avenue. This was approved 5-0. Do I have a motion? Motion by Wodinski, second by Larson. Is there any discussion? Yes, Alder Herbst.
I'm still looking at this.
Is your mic on?
Oh, no, just my big mouth.
Well, we need the audience to hear you.
Looking at everything in the packet, I'm just going past, and now I should have highlighted it and I didn't. But the fact that a gentleman had been spoken to and said that he had spoken to someone from the Davis Foundation, and that there was a good possibility that perhaps they could get together with the landing and collaborate this. And I really hate to just see this building being sold for whatever. We truly need a senior citizen center in this city, and I don't know what it's going to take. I know the Robinson family, after Chuck passed, tried to raise the money, and I was really hoping that we could get somebody, some help from the Davises or some foundation to see this go forward. Thank you.
I saw that Marianne put her mask on and she's probably walking this way, but Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. In CISM, we did have some discussion with the group originally that was trying to move Mr. Robinson's plan forward. We gave them some, until the end of October to figure out, or until October, to figure out whether or not that group still had the synergy to bring that project across the finish line. They indicated well in advance of our meeting date that they did not. But I guess to be clear, the interaction that was to happen between the landing and the senior center wasn't necessarily to merge services and have them work with the landing, but it was to ensure that the two programs weren't duplicative. And so there was limited communication between that group and the landing, but it wasn't, there was no intent on the part of the landing or its funders at the Davis Foundation to support this senior center. We were just going to make sure that they had different offerings.
I see the finance director has arrived in the chambers. I don't know if you have anything you'd like to add, but I'll give you the opportunity. Okay, I'll just let Marianne talk and then.
I was going to say I got a call from Mr. Robinson. Can you hear me?
Sorry, we were waiting for Marianne to talk, but you can go first.
Okay. Mr. Robinson had called me a few months ago and had wanted me to have a 3-ring binder and talk more about his concerns, especially about the differences and what he was thinking with the senior center would be that a number of seniors have had health problems or friends have died, and so their social group has gotten smaller and smaller and smaller, where they're becoming isolated at home and not having those different activities. So he was talking more about seniors that were isolated, that weren't as active, that would be at the landing, and that their circle was getting smaller, and so that he was trying to differentiate between the groups. And I do agree, we do need a senior center. I do go to the Y myself. I don't use the landing, but there are a number of seniors that are on fixed incomes that cannot afford it, or that they have other issues. They want to play cards and do some other activities that aren't at the landing. And so I wish we would look further into this property or maybe other property that may be more central to downtown that could be as an option for a senior center in the future.
Thank you. Marianne, do you want to?
Well, so I think when council asked us to pause on the sale of this property the last time, it was really to allow Mr. Robinson's daughter and some of his peers to try to put together a fundraiser to accomplish the redevelopment into a senior center, and they just weren't able to accomplish that. And so they, have notified us that they basically are giving up on that project. And without a champion, that property is just going to sit vacant. And it's, really probably not in the best interests of the taxpayers for that to do that, because we're going to heat it all winter. It's going to continue to decline. It will continue to put pressure on our fixed resources as far as things need to be repaired. It's hard for staff. I mean, I've shared this in the past as well. As property managers, we're not so bad when we occupy a building, but buildings that are unoccupied are very hard to manage because they are just plagued with a lot of problems. When the heating system goes out, there's no one to know that the pipes are freezing. When someone is broken into the property, there's no one to know that these situations have occurred. And pretty soon you find yourself kind of in a difficult situation, and the value of the property has declined further. And I think, that as we talked about it as staff and as we shared with CISM, the real estate market right now is very strong. And so I think it's in the city's best interest to sell the property. And, just because there's not a champion for that effort today doesn't mean that there's not going to be a champion for the effort someday. And there's always a building, that someone will be able to put together the resources when they have the right champions for the project.
Thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. I also agree with putting this building on the market with the Realtor to see, what use the private sector will find for it. I agree that we need alternative offerings for a senior center, and I think at some point, if the private sector brings us a project with a viable plan, because obviously they create it and they run it, we certainly can help, but that's not where our expertise lies. So if a project would emerge, if we can help assist finding a location for it in the future, I'd certainly support that. But at this point, I think we need to get rid of the old station too. Thank you.
Yes, Alder Peckham, you might need to, yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to praise those involved who brought this to us for involving a commercial real estate broker. I think that's very smart. We have, as a city, tried to sell some of the property that we've come to own, and we've had, let's say, mixed results on that. I think this is going to be better. The other tidbit I would add is that one of the functions that the ADRC, the woodworking shop that was there, the equipment has been passed on to a group that's formed and is going to be opening a woodworking shop in the lower level of the Forest Park Village. So that's coming, so that'd be, something for a place for seniors to go during the, you're not going to have card tables, but part of the function of the ADRC that's being missed is going to be restored.
Thank you, that's good information. All right, I'm not seeing any more discussion. I think we're ready to vote.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wodinski?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Ryan? Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you. We're moving on now to file number 201016. It's an ordinance from SISM authorizing the installation of stop signs at Both Street and South 8th Avenue. That failed in committee 2 to 3. Do I have a motion here? Motion by Larson, second by Wodinski. Is there any discussion here? Alder Ryan? Oh, nope, I think must be Alder Larson, sorry.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I know there's been a lot of discussion on this, and I know there's even been a traffic study that's been done on this that shows that, it's not appropriate at this time to put a stop sign at this intersection. However, after thinking about this and going back on some records and stuff, there's been some information that's been withheld from this packet that I assume I turned over. Maybe it got lost. And if you turn to your packet on page 47, you will see a police department report that says a total percentage of enforceable violations. Now, the packet only shows the violations for year 2020. What it doesn't show, what I got is the same from 2020, 2019, or 2018 and 2017. And so in 2017, there was a percentage above the limit of 1.6%. And from the percentage of 2018, it went up to 3%. And for 2020, it went up to 5.3%. So I have this information here, and if you wanted to see it, Madam Chair. Otherwise, I would like to make a motion that I honestly, I see that, I understand the surveys and stuff have been out there, but this has not been a traditional, the traditional policing has seemingly not been able to take care of this problem. As you can see, it's gone up almost 4%, the speeding in just 3-year period. And that is why I would like to put a motion out to put this on next month's agenda and make sure that this information is in the packet so all my colleagues can view it before they make a vote.
So you're asking this to be moved to the city council, next city council meeting?
Yes, so that this information can get put into the packet so all the colleagues can see it.
So we have a motion to postpone a vote on this until next month. There, we have a second by Killian. Alder Rasmussen, did you want to discuss this motion?
Yeah, yep, we actually are, I think, equipped to make a decision on this tonight, and I have some comments about that if now is the time. The two different alders in District 10 have grappled with this same intersection. we've looked at it twice, we've done traffic surveys out there at least twice, and both times the MUTCD standards that our ordinance says we shall comply with, not that we might want to comply with or that we should try to comply with, it says you shall comply, you will comply with MUTCD standards. So when our engineers looked at this corner, there was a disparity between the volume of traffic on 8th versus the volume of traffic on Boff. That said, the standard says that a four-way stop is allowed when traffic volumes are generally the same. That wasn't the case here. And so our engineers advocated against putting those stop signs up and leaving them where they're at on 8th and not installing them on Boff. And so we had a lengthy discussion about this in the committee. One of the years in question where statistics were gathered, Thomas Street was closed and Boff was the detour. There was a larger volume of traffic going through there at that time. Traffic or stop signs were installed on Boff at that point. They were removed late after the street construction was completed and the neighborhood had gotten used to them. And so former Alder Abbott's had received a number of requests from the adjacent neighbors who had gotten used to those stop signs there, inadvertently being used to control speed, and they wanted them back. And so at that point, we had looked at those traffic volumes in 2018, I believe, and voted not to install the signs. And since then, we've done yet another study. And so that study is the most recent data that we have here, but the staff recommendation was clearly to not install those second signs. So, I don't know that the old data is going to change. The old data, looking at the old data for another 2 weeks or another month won't change the standard. The MUTCD standard that engineering has to comply with won't be any different even if we review the other stats. So we have to make a decision as to whether or not we're going to uphold those standards that we're required to uphold, or if we are going to install those signs against recommendation. And so I don't feel that delaying is going to save anything. I think we need to make the decision and move it forward.
Okay. Is there any other discussion? The resolution, or yes, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I'd just like to point out that the last council meeting, there was a staff recommendation, and I believe some of my same colleagues had urged to vote against the staff recommendation. So I respect their opinion when it comes to respecting those recommendations or not, but it would be nice if it were consistent. And secondly, I think what we're seeing is an older person who represents this area asking very courteously for a simple request. And quite honestly, what we've seen in the past is this type of request. I believe I made one last meeting for a delay so that I could confer with some residents, and that was not respected. It's my opinion that this request is really not a big reach, and I would like to see it recognized, and I'm all for also adhering to standards, but if that is the position, we must adhere to our standards 100% in all occasions. So I feel that kind of what I'm hearing is an inconsistent assertion when it comes to staff recommendations and the standards that this body is intended to follow. I support Alder Larson's request, and I'll vote accordingly. Thank you.
Alder Rasmussen.
Excuse me, I just want to say, I think what we have, before we get too further into this, is a non-debatable motion by Larson to lay this on the table.
It's not.
And you got a second. So it was a motion, it wasn't a simple request, correct?
Yeah.
Alder Larson,
Correct.
you made a motion to table, not to
Correct.
lay on the table. To postpone to a certain time would be, but not to
Oh,
lay
will
on the
be,
table.
I guess the way I phrased
So-
it was postponed to the next meeting, so
All right, then that's debatable.
okay.
Not the topic, but whether to postpone it is debatable.
Yes.
Got it.
Thank you. The item that I think Alder Killian was referring to is the corner of 10th and Stark that we dealt with at our last meeting. That one came up for discussion immediately before 8th and Boff. And so the committee looked at that one as well. And the staff recommendation there also was to not amend the stop sign installation the way they were seated. As I said, though, the MUTCD standards does allow for a four-way stop when traffic volumes are generally the same in both directions. And so we did a traffic study on that one, and the traffic volume was very close between the two streets. And that really was the distinction between that intersection and this intersection. And so that traffic detail that we received at 10th and Stark also did not include any traffic to Kaiser Pool because it was closed at the time of the study, as was Tom Field. And so knowing that the traffic volume was close without those items in play, that corner was made a four-way stop at 10th and Stark. That is really a different situation, though, with the application of the standards. And so there really isn't the same disparity that you might think.
Thank you. Alder Ryan. Oh, one moment. What, you're going to have, one moment. Okay, we have you unmuted.
Okay.
Gotcha.
I just wanted to mention that we did have this discussion of, maybe it's been 6 months ago or so, about Randolph Street, that wanting to switch the way the stop signs were. And the SISM committee did defer and did not agree with engineering and felt it warranted a four-way stop. So there are some instances where we are making judgments different than what the staff is recommending.
Okay, thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. 12th and Randolph is also different. Swiderski Development has put in Urban West with 64 apartment units, all of which came with vehicles that were not residents of the area before. And that area then is also planned for a second building of the same size with an equal volume of vehicular traffic. And so under the circumstances, with that development plan on the horizon and the one that just opened, which is just over half full, we opted to install a stop sign at 12th and Randolph. But that also was a little bit different.
Thank you. Alder Larson.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I would just like to have the courtesy of my colleagues being able to view this information before they voted. That was been withheld from the packet. Thank you.
I'm not seeing further discussion. I think we're ready to vote on the motion to postpone this vote until the next city council meeting.
McElhaney? Wadinski?
Abstain. Didn't we have a motion on the floor already?
The motion was to postpone this, this vote until the next city council meeting.
Wasn't there a prior motion?
Yeah, but this would supersede it.
Excellent.
Okay.
I'll abstain.
Okay.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Nope.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst? No. Larson?
Aye.
Ryan? Motion passes 8-2 with one abstaining.
Okay, so you will see this next month on the next city council agenda.
Madam Chair, is there a way to get Ms. Ryan to verbally vote on these things instead of just getting a comment from staff?
She is verbally voting, but we're having muting complications. So the easiest way for most time efficiency is for me to relay what she's saying. If you would like to do it a different way, we can do that, but it will take longer.
I thought it'd be better if we could actually hear her, because I wasn't watching her at that time.
Alder Neal here. It seems that we do have the ability to remote control the mute function for Alder Ryan. So could we not just, whenever either a vote comes her way or she raises her hand, remotely mute and unmute as needed?
Sure, sure. We can do that, and we have been doing it. It often happens that it's not working.
I think that would just work.
Okay, so if that is what we would like to do, then Alder Ryan, I would ask that you no longer mute and unmute yourself, and then I will control all of your muting and unmuting from here on out.
Okay, she's given the affirmative on that being okay. All right, so Michelle will now be the unmute lady and the mute lady, so everybody ready. All right, we are moving on to item number 201017. It's an ordinance from SISM amending section 10.20.080A, designating no parking on the west side of the 100 block of South 7th Street. Do I have a motion?
So moved by Neil.
Neil, motion by Neil, second by Wadinsky. Is there any discussion on this? Yes, Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I see that in some of the committee minutes and so forth, along with kind of a memo from Mr. Lindman, there had been some discussion from the neighborhood. And what I understand is that there was one property owner, a landlord, who had expressed some concern. And I think there'd been some discussion in the committee meetings. And one I thought was a good point from Alder Wadinsky about, you know, there hasn't really been a petition brought forth by residents at this time, but if this would turn out to be kind of cause some unexpected significant concern from surrounding residents, there may be the possibility of some accommodations farther east or what have you. So I have not heard any additional concerns myself, but I guess I would just, I will support this tonight, but if there are concerns that stem from this in the surrounding area from residents, I just think my colleagues made some good points and in prior meeting, and staff had said there might be some potential to the east for parking if this would cause something, you know, a very substantial problem. So in the future, I just hope those words and sentiments are remembered about potential future citizen concerns. But as I see it this evening, there was not substantial concerns from the surrounding area. So I will be supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Alder Martins.
All right, thank you. I do have concerns about this changing to no parking on 7th Street. This Kickbush lies, you know, on the periphery of my district, and I have heard from residents that do live on Kickbush about issues with parking in that neighborhood. I drove down those two streets today to reacquaint myself with what's happening, and what you don't see is that on Kickbush between Grand Avenue and 7th Street is 2-hour parking, and then you know, past 7th all the way to Prospect on Kickbush, there you can park on both sides of the street. 7th Street between Kickbush and Forest is quite a narrow street, so I understand why you only can park on one side of the street. If there were cars parked on both sides of the street, it would not be feasible to get vehicles through there in any kind of safe manner. Looking at the pictures of the cars parked on 7th Street, especially the one on page 69 of our packet, I saw 2 of those 3 vehicles parked on that street today. So evidently those are the residents of the area. They would not have a place to park, or they would have to walk more than a half a block away to park park their cars if they're residents of that apartment building that does not offer off-street parking. So as this stands right now, I don't think I could support this unless we were to allow parking on the east side of 7th Street in lieu of no parking on the west side of 7th Street.
Okay, thank you. Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. And I guess maybe we'll ask if we have Public Works Director Lindman on the line as well. I was of the belief when we discussed this in committee that landlords are required to provide off-street parking for their dwellings, and that part of the reason we had trouble with this particular home that's affected by this is because the landlord is using the parking for the off-street parking facility for some of his own storage, which is preventing the tenants from using that area. And so that is a condition that the landlord has created that has caused the tenants to be moving out into the street. But we were willing to consider opening up some space on the east side, separate from this transaction if that becomes necessary. I know we'd gotten that into the meeting minutes. Did you have anything else on that, Eric, other than I thought the landlord was part of the problem there?
Yeah, I think you summed it up pretty well, Lisa. The landlord, I have not heard from him since before the CISM meeting when he made that comment to me. And I did let him know that, depending on how the decision is made, that, he can come back and, bring that information back forward if they have significant problems. And so if I hear from him, he can bring a petition back. He does have a driveway and a garage space and stuff in back. There are 2 or 3 old cars that are parked in there. I guess they don't move, or can't move or something. So that limits the parking spaces for the tenants. So then they're forced to park on the street.
And just as a follow-up, we did have, though, the request for this came because we have significant access and egress issues with the driveway for the body shop. Is that correct?
Yeah, they added some drive approaches on the west side of the street. And so, what was available parking was really restricted. And then the spacing between the drive approaches is pretty tight. So although it can accommodate a small car, when a truck or a longer car parks in there, then it kind of encroaches in on the drive approaches for the business that's there.
Thank you. Alder Killian.
Thank you, Madam Chair. And when I spoke earlier, I had said and kind of referenced some Alder's comments in committee meetings about getting more feedback, and that I really had not received any. But hearing Alder Martin's commentary, just as a neighboring Alder and district, that means a lot to me. And that's kind of the exact input that I was looking for, that I simply had not received thus far. And based on what I've heard or read in committee minutes and so forth, it does not seem impossible or not viable to balance things out in terms of more, perhaps parking potential on the east. And I think it's a situation where helping a local business and helping our local residents are not mutually exclusive in this case. So my position stands revised based on Alder Martin's comments. I thank him for that, and I will not be supporting this. It seems that we could find an outcome where the issues with entering and exiting the body shop could be resolved, while also making it viable for residents who live in the neighborhood. And I don't disagree with the comments about tenants parking on the street and so forth, but whenever we take these positions, I feel that we should make them uniform across the city with the same intensity of application. And this is an area that is rather financially challenged. So I would not like to see a position taken by this body about such parking unless we enforce that position with equal intensity across the entire city. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion here? Yes, Alder Wadinsky.
In this location, we also have to take into account that street that empties mid-block into 7th Street with traffic and truck traffic. They have to have enough area to turn and maneuver safely. It's a narrow street, comes onto 7th Street, and those cars have to be able to turn safely. And if a landlord needs parking for tenants on the street, I think he needs to petition the city for that. And then we can tell him he can't do that, because if we did that, our streets would be full of cars all over. I mean, we have to be consistent. I don't think we want people using the street for parking lots. We want the street for thoroughfare.
Thank you. Is there any further discussion here? Yes, Alder Martins.
Yeah. And I'd agree that, that the streets are thoroughfares, and, they shouldn't be clogged with cars if they're if it's unnecessary, but we're in a position here where there's 2 blocks on Kickbush that are, or a block and a half on Kickbush that are only allowed for 2-hour parking, and there's maybe 1 block that's allowed all day or overnight, all day parking. I guess they're all overnight parking because the 2-hour expires at 6 o'clock. But there's definitely a lack of daytime parking, and I'm still going to vote no, but I would encourage either the landlord or the residents of that neighborhood to then petition to change the parking on the others, on other parts of the streets so that there is a better accommodation for tenants in that area.
Is there any further discussion? I'm not seeing any. I think we're ready to vote on this ordinance.
Peckham? Martins?
No.
Killian?
No.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Ryan?
No.
It worked.
Motion passes 8-3.
Thank you very much. All right, we are moving on to file number 191109. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving the 2020 budget modification for $10,000 for emergency government consulting services. I'll give you a little blurb on this. Obviously, this year we have encountered a pandemic, and one of the big things that we need to do is come up with emergency management planning. So this is meant as a way to supplement what we're already doing. We have an emergency management office through the county that we partner with, and this will allow us to work with them to create more comprehensive plans, training, table exercises. Our fire department leaders and our police leaders and also folks from Department of Public Works have kind of talked through what it is we're looking for this service. So this will be a collaboration with the county, and we'll see how it works, and it might be something we talk to you about again. So motion by Rasmussen, second by Martins.
Second by Neal.
Oh, sorry. Second by Martins. Is there any discussion on this? I'm not seeing any. I think we're ready to vote.
Ryan?
Yes.
Larson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
Thank you very much. All right, next up, I'm looking for a motion to suspend the rules. 6B filing, 2/3 vote is required on this. I will
So moved by Neal.
motion by Neal, second by Wadinsky. Guess we're ready to vote.
McElhaney? Wadinsky?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Motion passes 11-0.
All right, thank you very much. We are on file number 201018. It's a resolution from the Finance Committee approving a settlement to offer settle claim with Zagster, Inc. That meeting just happened. It failed at committee, but I would take a motion. Motion by Rasmussen. Second. Second by Herbst. All right, Alder Rasmussen.
Thank you. Just a little background on what happened at Finance. There was a claim submitted. Zagster is, I guess for background, Zagster is the company that we intended to have operate the bike share on the riverfront. We had a grant and a allocation from a foundation to make that happen. Zagster, shortly after the contract was negotiated, collapsed. And so there is kind of a hornet's nest, according to the city attorney, of things that need to be sorted out with Zagster and their pending claims and the entity that's now in possession of them. That said, we have possession of the bikes. They are being leased through another entity yet, and they may have some viability for us in terms of a future use. The representative from the settlement company for Zagster offered us $900 on an $18,000 claim. That said, we decided that there was no great loss to us to deny this settlement offer and leave our claim out there and, let it sort itself out. We've invested minimal legal time, and, rather than take such a small amount to try to settle a larger obligation, we've decided to wait. And so with that, the committee voted unanimously to deny the settlement offer. So if that's the case, the motion is in the affirmative. So if you agree with the committee, we would then all vote no. So thank you.
Okay, is there any discussion on this? I'm not seeing any. I think we're ready to vote.
Peckham? No. Martins? No. Killian?
No.
Neal?
No.
Wadinsky?
No.
McElhaney? No. Rasmussen?
No.
Watson?
No.
Herbst?
No.
Larson?
No.
Ryan?
No.
Motion fails, 0 to 11.
Thank you very much. We are moving on to file number 021217. It's a joint resolution from HR and Finance approving the bargaining agreement between the City of Wausau and Wausau Firefighters Association for January 1, 2021 through December 31st, 2022. I would take a motion. Motion by Larson. Do I have a second? Second by Rasmussen. Is there any discussion? Everyone seems pretty happy about this. All right. I will ready for vote.
Ryan?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
McElhaney? Motion passes 11 to 0.
Thank you very much. Moving on to file number 201021. It's a joint resolution from HR and Finance authorizing the reclassification of senior property appraiser to deputy assessor. That was approved. I see that our assessor has waited this whole meeting out. Do I have a motion? Motion by Larson.
Second.
Second by Neal. Is there any discussion? Not seeing any.
Rasmussen?
Aye.
Watson?
Aye.
Herbst?
Aye.
Larson?
Aye.
Ryan?
Aye.
Peckham?
Aye.
Martins?
Aye.
Killian?
Aye.
Neal?
Aye.
Wadinsky?
Aye.
McElhaney?
Aye.
Motion passes 11 to 0.
Right. Thank you. Last item on our agenda before adjourning is public comment. Is there anybody here? I'm not seeing any members of the public. And suggestions, if there are any suggestions. I think we took those mid-meeting.
Suggest we move to adjourn?
All right, we have a motion to adjourn. Do I have a second? Second by Killian. All those in favor can signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? I don't think so. All right, thank you. We stand adjourned.